out to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that plane and buy anything. More than just a podcast for you.
So now we're going to do what we do best, which is get a little bit technical in our show. And so this is where we're going to offer some tips. Most of you guys have heard, if you're a parent and you haven't heard of something called the ClearingHouse or the Eligibility Center, this part of the show is for you. So people, when should the ClearingHouse or the Eligibility Center process be completed, and who should be completing that process?
I think it depends on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I was just going to ask, could she clarify when should it be completed? I mean, because you have to go all the way through the senior year sending them certain things anyway. So are you saying who should complete it, or?
In this instance, when should you even build your profile?
Oh, okay. You can go ahead, Monica.
I think it depends on the sport, and I also think it depends on the athlete. Technically, you don't have to start it until your junior year. But for us, because he started getting interest as early as 8th grade and recruiting started early for us, Paris started his eligibility process with NCAA his freshman year. And because my background is that I'm a high school college counselor, so I'm very familiar with that process. And so I wanted to make sure that Paris was hitting the Common Core, and the Common Core is your math, your English, your science, your foreign language. They really don't care much about PE or health because they want to focus in on the academic core, which is going to be similar at all high schools throughout the country. So that's what they're focusing on. So I wanted to make sure that he was checking all the boxes for the core, and then also making sure that he was maintaining a high GPA, because we all know that there's a sliding scale with that. If you have a high GPA, your standardized test score does not need to be as high, or vice versa. So I wanted to make sure we got a head start just because he started the recruiting process early. But for other students, you don't necessarily have to start as early as your freshman year. You can start that process junior year.
I'm going to say as early as possible. If you have a kid in high school and you know that they are even remotely considering playing at the collegiate level, you need to make sure that they have a profile in both clearinghouses, the one for the NCAA as well as the one for the NAIA, because the tracking of the grades is very, very important. I talk to parents all the time who wait till it's too late. And I have a mom that I work with now. Her son's a junior, and he is not going to be able to recover to meet the core requirements. And she didn't even know that there was a core requirement. So for her, waiting has actually, unless he does something D3 where it's not really it doesn't really kind of matter. And I say that loosely, because of the timing of her waiting, she's missed an opportunity because you can't go back and recover those classes, as it's too late for him to make up what he didn't miss, if that makes sense. So I'm going to say it should be completed as early as possible, and it should always be completed by the family because of the questions that they ask. They're going to ask your academic, the classes that your kid has taken, but more than that, they're going to ask about their outside athletic activities, and the parent is the person that's going to have all of that information. So and there's a cost, and we'll talk about that later, but in my opinion, it's as early as possible, because you can't recover if you haven't done the right things from an academic class perspective.
I'll agree with you. I'll
go on, Mr. Ramsey.
What are you saying? I'm sorry.
I said go on, Mr. Ramsey.
Okay. I'll agree with both of you. It should be started as early as possible. I'm one of those, James Etta can tell you, I'm one of those, let's get it done early, just in case something pops up at the end, we have time to fix it. So what we did personally with both of my boys is we started ninth grade year and we start building. So we would send whatever they needed for that point, and then whatever they needed the next year, then whatever they need the next year. Then the final year, basically the only thing we were waiting for was that final transcript to be sent, and it kept us on like a timeline, so to speak, to make sure everything was done. We weren't panicking. I do the same thing with the kids that I trained. I try to get them to start taking a ACT and SAT during the 8th grade, and just take it every year, at least once every year, and then even if you make a qualifying score early, now we're just working on making a better score. And for some of these guys who are not going to go D1, having a higher ACT score really gets them a lot more money at NAI and Division II schools. So the sooner we can do it, either one of them, the better off we're going to be down the line. And yes, it should be a family thing because, like you said, some of the questions they're not ready to answer, but they need to answer some of them because it makes them invested in it. They need to know what's going on, and you just shouldn't answer. I see a lot of parents just take care of everything. Then the kid gets there, he don't know what's happening. So they need to be invested in it also.
Yeah, I agree. We started with Micah toward the middle of his 9th grade year. And like I said, early as possible, because a lot of these kids understand, like, freshman year is their golden year. You know, that's where you get your GPA and your foundation starts. And most of them, they start in 9th grade, they want to play around. They just happen to be in high school, but they don't understand, like, they could really be shooting themselves in the foot early and don't pay attention to the late. So I always tell them, let's start this early. Even if you don't want to play sports in college, still do it, because you never know while you playing, something could come across and you're already set. Where if you don't, now you got to go through the loopholes, trying to go real fast and get everything done. And like I said, as parents, you know, we don't know a lot of stuff. And some of these coaches really don't be telling us. They may just say something real quick, but they really have to be more hands-on. Bring the kids and the parents in and talk to them, because, again, like I said, from my area, it's a struggle. And a lot of kids miss out because the parents don't know. You know, a lot of focus be on the win. You know, we winning, but these kids ain't winning.
Right.
So, you know, we get more people just trying to share the word, and then, you know, that word around here is called you a hater. No, I'm not a hater. I'm just trying to help you to understand what's going on, because there's too much time around here and there's too much free money to be losing out on because you didn't know.
And I will say that it's super important. You know, I always say all the time I work with moms, but a friend of mine, because some parents are listening to this and they're saying, well, oh, my kid's in all advanced classes, we're up on academics. Doesn't matter what type of class your kid is taking. We live in a county that has a lot of, like, I call them fancy smancy classes, but my friend, her son wanted to play college football. And he was very academically inclined as well. And so his senior year, one of the classes that he was recommended by his guidance counselor was sports statistics. The class that the NCAA recognized in the clearinghouse was statistics. So no one could the guidance counselor never picked up that there's a difference between sports statistics and statistics. So it's the end of it's the second half of his senior year. He still doesn't have any offers. His mom is going into the clearinghouse and looking at his status, and it's still saying that he's not eligible, and she doesn't know why. Well, it wasn't until the very last semester that they figured out that his sports statistics class didn't count. Now, there is an approval process that you can go through if you have a class that is more advanced, but it takes a while. And by the time he got sports statistics recognized for being approved by the NCAA clearinghouse as a core class, it was too late. He was not able to get a scholarship. He actually ended up walking on at a local school here, MTSU, but still all of the opportunity that he had before, it was gone. So the clearinghouse, it matters. Like, some parents might be listening and saying, well, my kid's got his grades together, but what if your kid is doing something that's different, more academically advanced? It's important for us to know, because in this instance, the guidance counselor didn't even realize that the class that she was recommending was actually going to prevent him from being able to accept an athletic scholarship because it wasn't recognized. So it's super, super, super important. And it's probably the clearinghouse, to Coach Parsons' point, not knowing that it even exists is probably the number one reason why parents, the moms that I talk to, they come to me all the time. My kid's a junior or he's a senior. He's getting all these accolades. He's in the news, but no one's talking to them. And I'm like, does he have a profile? And they're like, well, what's the eligibility center? Well, that's what lets a coach know he can actually talk to your kid and it's worth his time. And so that lack of knowledge that you pointed out, Coach Parsons, super, super, super important.
Can I just add one more thing for the listeners out there? I encourage the parents to go to the ClearingHouse eligibility website. You can type in the name of your high school that your child is attending, and you can see all the classes that's been approved by NCAA. And if your child is taking a course and it's not there and you believe that it's academically sound, have the counselor submit that course for approval to NCAA. It's really quick. It's a quick email that the counselor can send. I've done it several times. So I just encourage parents to look ahead, do their research early, and see what's out there to make sure your child is taking the right classes.
And it's good that you point that out, because that's 3 people that should be on your team. You as the parent, your child, and the guidance counselor. Because like Ramsey was saying earlier, this is a consistent process. At the end of every semester, your guidance counselor has to send those updated grades. Even the last semester of high school, that last second semester, it still has to go. So hopefully, go ahead.
Oh yeah, real quick. I don't know about in your areas, but at our school, when it comes down to that payment part, our school actually give them a waiver, so they don't actually have to pay. I don't know if that's everywhere, but it costs, but the students have to pay. I know in our area we don't. The counselor, once they know they completed up to the payment part, they put that voucher in, and then it's ready to go.
I think that's based on it has some stipulations for it, so I don't think everybody can get the waiver. But you know, if you got kids who I know if they can get the free lunch program and all that kind of stuff, they most definitely can get the waiver, not just on the ClearingHouse, but also on the ACT.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we get I think we get 2. I think they're granted 2 or 3 free ones throughout their high school.
Yeah.
So if you take more than that, then you got to pay.
Yeah, you get 2 for ACT and 2 for SAT for each year.
So can I ask you this, Ms. Monica, since you do the counseling? I'm a big one on, I think the kids should take the ACT and the SAT because they're graded differently.
Absolutely.
I made my boys take both, and I did notice that on one, they scored higher, than the other. And a lot of kids, especially minority kids, we always get stuck on, we just take the ACT. I will tell you, both of my boys made their first time taking it 24s on ACT, but their SAT scores were higher than their ACT scores. But when we go, it's not many of us taking the SAT. It's not publicized as much. And do you see the same thing?
For both, I agree with you. So the counselor in me, I've always encouraged my students to take both the ACT and SAT. I'm really big on test prep. So I would have my students take the test prep for both just to see where they are. And then you want to go with your area of strength and where the student feels comfortable. And for both Paris and Sydney, I had them take the ACT and SAT. Paris did much better on the ACT versus the SAT. And I believe my daughter Sydney is going to do better on the SAT versus the ACT. And what I find is Paris is very black and white. And then my daughter Sydney is very creative. So usually your kids that are more creative have a tendency to do better on the SAT versus the ACT. So I encourage students to take both. We go with your area of strength because colleges will take both. So it really doesn't matter. And start early. Paris started taking standardized testing as early as 7th grade because I wanted him to feel comfortable being in that setting and not feel the stress or the pressure. So I wanted to eliminate that. So my kids started back in middle school.
That's great. That's what I tell my parents too. You learn something, even if they don't get the score, they learn how the test is giving. They learn how the atmosphere is. And the next time they're going to be more comfortable coming in. So that's why we take it early and often.
Yes, I agree.
And I have a question, Monica. Do you encourage kids to take the PSAT? Because to get that, I have learned that there are additional scholarship opportunities that are tied to the PSAT. Do you encourage your students to take that?
Well, here in the state of Ohio, all students have to take the PSAT. So it is required here, and the students have two opportunities to take it. They'll take it their sophomore year, then they'll take it their junior year, and that's when a score actually counts, and that's when they can be a national merit finalist, just what you're speaking about, different scholarship opportunities. And then one thing I just want to point out, and I hope I'm not digressing too much here, but if you have a student that is well-rounded, meaning that they're strong academically as well as a gifted athlete, if that student is given an athletic scholarship and they're also are giving an academic scholarship, they're going to lose the academic scholarship.
Yes.
So I just want parents to know that, because the athletic scholarship will take precedent over the academic one. And we saw that with Paris at Ohio State, where he was awarded both. So he could not accept the academic. He had to stay with the athletic scholarship. So I just want parents to know that as well.
Awesome. Good stuff, guys. Keep listening to us, because we give you the practical things that you need to know if you're thinking about recruiting. So we talked about this a little bit last week on the show, and I'm curious as to your thoughts. A lot of kids who get early national exposure, like starting in elementary school, going up through high school, AAU comes to mind, they usually fall short of people's expectations. I want us to think about, why is that? And is early exposure a bad thing?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's how they handle it. It's not the exposure, it's just how they handle it. Are they mature enough to handle it? Are their parents mature enough to handle it? That's what we really need to be asking, because because a lot of times the parents feel like they just got the offer, you know what I mean? And they're out there and they're hyping it up and they're doing all this other kind of stuff. And you're like, man, if she acting like this, I can't even imagine how he's going to be acting in a little bit. Then their head gets too big. They got to have a team around them who can keep them humble and keep them level-headed, no matter if they get one offer or 50 offers. That's the thing. They got to have, I always call it, they got to have that man that says no around them all the time, or that man who said, you ain't did nothing yet. They need that person, because so many people get on their team who start patting them on the back how great they are. And that's good, but it has to be some balance there. So if you start letting them do what they want to do because they're a good athlete, you don't hold them accountable, you're going to have problems later. So it can be good or bad. You just got to see what the people around them are the ones who's going to help rein them in, or see where they're going with this.
This might be just me, but I feel like everything before high school is an asterisk, because we all know kids who are big, fast, but when they're smaller. And so those kids tend to be the successful ones, but once you get to high school, and especially college, there's parity. You're not the biggest kid. You're not the fastest kid. You're not the most athletic kid. So I think that in terms of national exposure, it really bugs me when I see highlight kids of first graders or second graders or even fifth or sixth graders. Like, dude, they're babies. When they hit high school, the growth spurts for other children will start to happen. My cousin grew from 8th grade to 9th grade. He grew 6 inches and he put on 80 pounds. All the people in football that used to run over him when he was in middle school, when he got to Ridgeway, he was running them over. So I just don't like the whole, my kid is awesome and he's 12, because he's not really awesome. He's just big. Okay. Maybe.
I agree. No, I agree with you. Everything you're saying is right.
100%.
Like, sit down. He's not super good. I'm just saying.
Man, I get huddle highlights of 9-year-olds right now. I'd be like, dude, don't send me that. I don't have time to look at that mess. So.
Like, I've legit seen people, I know you've seen it, they're training 5-year-olds, like intense training. I'm like, for why? He's 5.
Yeah. Just let them have fun. That's the thing. Let them have fun. Expose your kids to all sports. and let them just enjoy themselves and just enjoy the process. And then eventually they will make their way to the sport that they're passionate about. Just let them have fun.
But it really, maybe I was like, am I alone on my island? Because please don't. Let's not and say we did. Let's wait till high school. Please. Let's do
Right.
that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I just play devil's advocate. Like, social media, it could be good, then it could be the devil. I mean, like, so when you get that exposure early, I mean, it's good to an extent. Like, okay, I'm out here, people know me. But at the same time now, the art of being a kid is taken away from you because now they're watching everything you do. Everything you say, they'll try to twist it, either make you look good or make you look bad. So it all depends on the situation. And like Mr. Ramsey said, on how the parents handle it, how the kid handle it, because I never let my son know he was good. I'd be like, you did all right, though. You still got more to grow on. Because once that child gets the word from that person they look up to say they're good, that's when the work stops. Now they just go through the motions. So for me, I'm like, oh yeah, you had 3 sacks, but you might could have 4. You got to work a little bit harder. You know what I mean? You got to keep pushing them. Because once you stop pushing them, it all goes downhill. So yeah, early on it looks great. But once they don't know how to go out and battle outside their home, it hurts. Because like I said, everybody could be good in their area, because your area might not be that strong. You might just be the big kid or the fastest kid. But now when you go outside your area, when you leave to go off to school, everybody's big and fast. Now you can't compete. So now all that early exposure, what did it mean to you? It really didn't mean nothing. And prime example, back home, we had a wrestler from Harrisburg, Phil Davis. He never won a district title, never won a state title. Penn State saw him, gave him a full scholarship. He was in the locker room with everybody. Everybody had state titles. He said to himself, I got to be the best wrestler in this room now, because they came in being the best. Make a long story short, he became their 3rd 4-time All-American, and then his last year won a national championship. So again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But his grittiness was like, man, I want to be that good. But in high school, it's different because all sports, how you get taught to win right now. When you get to college, well, you taught to win on this level now. So when you taught to win on that level, now you see the difference. Because like I tell people, I really realized my son was pretty good after his freshman year. Because I was like, you just bigger and fast. But then when I started seeing him, I said, oh, man, he might be pretty good. But it took a while for me to accept that. Because, again, I just looked at the town, the area around you, it ain't as strong. So I'm like, you're supposed to do that. But when you do that consistently as you get older, maybe you are that good. It just takes me a little longer to see it because, again, going from high school to college to the NFL, that's a kid's dream. Right. It doesn't happen for everybody. So when it's sitting there right in your face, like even right now, they say, yes, son. I'm like, man, listen, he's graduating in December. That's the only thing I know. If they call his name in April, now I can be like, yo, yeah, you did it. But until then, anything can happen. So parents got to keep their boundaries and not try to live through their kids. Mm-hmm. Just support their kids and just keep pushing them and pushing them. Yeah, it's going to be some give back, you're getting on my nerves. Yeah, okay. But if I get you to that point you want to be at, you could thank me later. You could be mad at me now, but thank me later.
I think you guys have come up with some really good points. One, the whole taking your kid out of the area. No, really, because I think about track. So my kids ran track, and my daughter was a quarter horse. And it's different when you're like top 3 in your area. Mm-hmm. But we would go to AAU Club Nationals in Florida. And every year the Jamaican girls would come. And let me tell you, when they hit the track, you was like, whoo, they got them bunnies. Like they were really like, so it was like a really good, like, you think, oh, I run Tennessee, Alabama, my little region, I'm good. But when you go to another area and you get kids from, I say the Jamaicans because in Florida, we would run nationals and they would be tearing people out the frame from a speed perspective. But like, when you go to Junior Olympics and you get the people from like all other parts of the country, it helps your kid keep things in perspective. Like, you sweet, but you're not that sweet. It's something sweeter out there. And I think the point that Coach Parsons made is, are we as parents helping our kids see, are you local?
Yes.
And is your local talent, does that really matter versus making it a point to get our kids outside of their local area to give parity. That's really, really important. I want our listeners to take that away. And then Ramsey, when you talked about, can the kid handle it? When you're the best, or when you're always in the highlight film, you basically have a target on your back, whether you're 12, 10, or 9. And I don't know, maybe this is a question for another show. Do we equip our children mentally to be able to deal with it when the target is on their back? Because if you're the best at something, you already know everybody is going to get up for you. Their goal is to have their best performance when they're playing against you. So maybe that's something for another show. Like, do we as parents, as coaches, or whatever, do we prepare our children from the mental health perspective for having
Don't lose your trust.
Back on Coach Parson, I want to say I agree. The biggest thing for me with Paris, I wanted to make sure, is he really as advertised? I wanted to make sure everything, all the accolades and all the ratings, because I remember I mentioned on the first show that you all invited me to be on, that Paris never attended a camp. The only camp he went to was the regional for the opening. So he never attended a camp. So, but I needed to know, was he really as advertised? Because I'm just that type of parent. I want to know the truth. Don't just sell me a story, tell me the truth. And so Paris went to that camp and had a dynamic performance there. And he truly was as advertised. And I think it's important for parents to really know what ability your student have by taking them outside of their area, just to really see, and also for your kid to see. Even though Paris tested well, he still walked away with, okay, Mom, I need to work on this. I need to change this. And that's something that I try to preach to both my kids. You have to reevaluate yourself every single day, because we're not perfect. So you have to reevaluate yourself, and also remain humble. So I'm really big on being humble and not being prideful, which probably could lead into, like you said, in another topic on another show, about the mental health piece of getting that attention or having that target on your back. That I think that will be great to talk about in the future.